Hello there. Right, so I'm just going to, I don't suppose anyone's there yet, I'm just going to tweet this out. Oh, let me turn the sound down. Okay, I'm just going to tweet this out and then and put it on Facebook, and then I will start. So I just give me 2 seconds. I meant to get this prepared before I started, but didn't manage to do that. Never mind. Let me just do this. I've only got to put it on Facebook, then I can go tweeted that and. Okay, let's go. I'm just going to put it on here, so if you happen to comment on the video and I can see it. So technically wise, I'm broadcasting over 4G with my phone, so I'm hoping that it doesn't drop out like it did yesterday, which was a bit annoying. And I've also got a complete cup of coffee, so I'll know when to stop. 2 minutes. I've only got 8 minutes left. So yesterday it was good fun to do these again, but the stream dropped out, and I think it kind of loses. It can't really make sense of it. I mean, it's difficult enough to make sense of the stuff that I'm talking about anyway without having the stream drop out. So I thought I'd do another one so that one didn't sit at the top of the page, and I kind of came up with a thought as well. Obviously, I saw the Cosmic Trigger play, the last performance of the Cosmic Trigger play on Saturday, and it was amazing and fabulous. And there's one line in it that resonates with me. It resonated with me when I read it in the Robert Anton Wilson book, and I think it's probably this that's triggered off the train of thought in my mind. So it's a simple line, basically. So if you don't know the story, what happened? It's about a lot of things, but one of the key things in it is that Robert Anton Wilson felt that he had a connection with the star system Sirius, and he was getting alien intelligence. And part of the book is about if it is the choice between, you can say, oh well, obviously I'm just having kind of a psychedelic experience. It's just my mind playing tricks on me. Or you could take the other route, which is to say it's real, and what does that say about your perception of the rest of your reality? So one of the key message that kept coming through to Wilson was about time. He said, so I pulled it out for you here. He says, but the entity, which is the Syrian alien, says to him, always intently urged that I should try to understand time better. And if quite a lot of Cosmic Trigger book is concerned with things like life extension and cryogenics and this sort of thing, kind of a very 60s kind of vibe to it, and obviously that those cryogenics and life extension are all based upon a particular idea of the progression of time and life and death and this sort of thing. So that's where we come to big old Nobby. So Norman O'Brien, my favourite books here, Life Against Death. So I've put a bunch of stuff up on Norman O'Brien about time, and I've written quite a lot about it. I haven't actually reread it because I didn't want to just give you the same old. It's all on my site, so I'll put the links up when I post this on my Tumblr. So I'll just start with one of these random ones. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. I'll start with. So I'll start with this general idea of psychoanalysis and time, and then hopefully I can bring it into a little bit more of an idea of why I think this is related to money. Let me take my glasses off. Oh, I'll have to put them back on for reading. So Norman O'Brien says that that Freud didn't really get into this idea of time in the unconscious and the idea that time doesn't really exist in the unconscious. If you know your Jung, you'll know that Jung gets far more deeply into this, and for him, time is kind of mutable. It can, stuff from the future can affect the present, and vice versa, and all this sort of stuff. So it's Freud didn't really get into that. He had quite a sort of progressive, linear kind of approach to time, but he did recognise that he hadn't really explored the full meaning of this. Here we go. Freud does not seem to have envisaged the mutability of the time schema, which is the idea that it's rationality that creates time. I think it's from Kant, is it? Yeah, the Kantian equation. Much less its abolition, along with the abolition of repression. So basically, Norman Brown's idea is that time and repression and guilt and life and death are all mixed up, which is why redemption plays a key role as well. So let me read you this quote, because this kind of gets across this idea really, really, really well. There's a few things in it which, a few names which, don't worry if you don't know them. I don't know them most of the time. So this is from Life Against Death, page 274. Archaic time, meaning conceptions of the time in the ancient past, is cyclical, periodic, unhistoric. Modern time is progressive, historical, continuous, irreversible. Iliade, who's an author, shows that the periodicity of archaic time is based on a religion of periodic redemption, and modern progressive time is based on a religion of ultimate redemption at the end of time. Hebrew in origin and given classic formulation in Christianity. Once again, it appears that secular rationalism, in this case the classical rationalist theory of time, is really the prolongation of the basic premise of Christianity, but minus the crucial point of redemption. So there's two really important things here. Important in my mind because they relate to things that have just gone on. So going back to the cosmic trigger thing, we're lucky enough to see Adam Curtis and Alan Moore sit on stage for 90 minutes and just talk about all sorts of stuff, including this idea of redemption at the end of time, and the fact that the idea of revolution and what comes after revolution. Alan Moore said the question he gets asked a lot is, is there going to be a let me just switch this back to this song. See, is there going to be a second part of V for Vendetta? So to what happens once Parliament gets blown up? And he said if he knew the answer to that, then he would definitely write it, but nobody knows. Adam Curtis was on a lot about this as well. It's we can envisage the point where we get to this juncture, this crucial point of chaos, but we can't see beyond it. I think this is what Norman Brown is getting at too here, is that we are trapped in these cycles of what essentially credit and debt. They're economic things of redemption, which is an economic word. So these ideas are definitely there in the mix, and there's lots of people thinking about them in all sorts of different ways. So I just wanted to. I'm 9 minutes. So let me, because how many do my coffee's getting a bit chilly. So hopefully I've given you some idea that time and redemption are linked. I'm just trying to see if I can find another one there too. In fact, I've got Norman Brown's book. I think that I might be able to find it in here. Here we go. So I'll just quickly do this, and then I will just read you. I'll just go over one paragraph in this book. Then we'll call it a day. Freud specifically postulated some special connection between the death instinct and the repetition compulsion, like the defense mechanism of undoing. Like Freud postulated, rhythmic periodicity in perception is a temporal structure. Separation, the decisive act in the defense mechanism of isolation, is also a manifestation of the death instinct. The connection between time and the death instinct has suffered the general neglect of the death instinct in psychoanalytical literature. I don't know if that's the right thing, but so I'm losing my track now. So all I was trying to get at there was that psychoanalysis basically, if you take it a little bit of a step beyond Freud, which was what Norman O'Brien did, is that you start with this that it can be described as this idea that we start with this primal state of guilt, and then everything that comes beyond that is an attempt to deal with that primal state of guilt. And of course, when the guilt debt is paid, that's death. The debt is no more, and it's the same with money. You know, the Bank of England debt, the original Bank of England debt that the bank was formed on, which paid for a war, has never been repaid. There's a bit in David Graeber's book where he postulates that if it was repaid, then money would be at an end. Now, I don't know about that, if that's true or not, but let me see if I can tie that in into this last paragraph, which is from a Nigel Dodd, and it's about Walter Benjamin, and it's one of my favourite paragraphs because it ties into a lot of the stuff that I try to do, and it ties into this idea of redemption and debt and time. We can get into that a little bit more, maybe with David Graeber's work later on. So this is about what Walter Benjamin says about it. So and I shall remind you, before we do that, then I shall remind you the first quote in here, which is when Walter Benjamin says that beyond doubt a secret connection exists between the measure of goods and the measure of life, which is to say between money and time. And not to give you a spoiler, but obviously I think the connection between money and time comes through ritual. Anyway, so Walter Benjamin's quote. So let's get into this idea of capitalism and time and money and see where that leads us here with this quote. So capitalism is a purely cultic religion, Benjamin says. So it says, perhaps the most extreme that ever existed. A cult is an emaciated religion. It lacks a proper theology. It cannot answer questions of ultimate value and offers only superficial comforts. So it's like this in this state of capitalism where we keep going. We never reach that final state. There's this final state postulated, this final redemption, this great paying of the debts. But we never, ever reach it, which is what Norman O'Brien was saying in the quote about... I've just clicked it and lost it now. It appears that secular rationalism is the classical rationalist theory of time, is really the prolongation of the basic premise of Christianity minus redemption. And that's kind of what Benjamin is saying here, Benjamin I should call him, is saying here too. A true theology, so a true idea of how we could live economically, in this instance, would promise redemption, forgiveness, an encounter with God, or a resolution of life's underlying tensions. It would promise, in Norman O'Brien's words, the end of repression. A cult offers only distractions. It is closed and inward-looking, and everything is drawn back into its nexus of value. Things have meaning only in their relationship to the cult, and every action and every deed is assigned a rating in its shallow moral economy. A cult offers ritual, but not transcendence. Capitalism is such a cult. So, hopefully then you can see that there's these relationships between money and currency and time and redemption and guilt and all that goes on in our minds. And one point I just wanted to make that I didn't really get into here was this idea of time in the unconscious, and the fact that time doesn't really exist in the unconscious. The unconscious has no concept of time. So you can take that to mean two things. Can you take that to mean that the unconscious is a fantasy, or is it doesn't really exist? Which, although we it's generally believed it does now, that was Freud's defining thing. He postulated, he made a metaphysical commitment to the unconscious, which wasn't there before. It wasn't there from his tutor, whose name escapes me at the moment. So let me leave it there. Sorry, that was a bit rambly, but thanks very much. I hope it's been all right, and I'll see you another time.